Right.
Hello, good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. And I am here with Liad from Israel. Liad, you can introduce yourself.
I'm Liad from Israel.
That's great.
I'm a Reiki master for the past 20 years. Did my BA and MA in the East Asian history. And I'm currently a doctoral student in Tel Aviv University. I wrote my MA thesis on Reiki. I'm one of the so-called Reiki scholars. Wrote about the connection between the ancient roots of Reiki, between Reiki initiation and the ancient ritual of Kanjo. And currently I'm writing my doctoral thesis about, let's say, the anatomy of the great Reiki teachers.
Fantastic. I also think what is really interesting to mention, Liad, that before you did that, you really studied also the esoteric elements, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. I guess that was one of the main factors that kind of got me into writing my thesis, my MA thesis about the connection, because so I started my BA, did East Asian history, culture, religion, etc. I got very interested in Japan. That was like a pan Asia, with India, China, and Japan kind of being the main focus. And then I took a further focus into Japan, and especially Japanese religion, so to say, Japanese Buddhism and Shinto, and I was very interested in esoteric Buddhism. And the further we went into the subject, into studying this, and I'm being introduced to all these things that are considered like the fingerprint of esoteric Buddhism, and these things that are considered kind of very, these are the inner teachings, and these are the very special things of this tradition. And I'm like, I know this stuff. I feel like I learned that in Reiki. So that kind of that got me into feeling like there's a connection to be studied in there.
Yeah, I mean, Liad and I, we haven't met personally, but we've been chatting through the internet for many, many years now, and about these kind of subjects. And for me, this is what I really like myself too. You know, when I first studied the system of Reiki, and then when I went to Japan in the first time in 2001, and then met with different people over the years, I became more and more aware that Mikasui, he wasn't sitting on that Mount Karama and poof, some kind of amazing teachings appeared in front of him. He created his teachings based on old teachings, what he was practicing himself. And if you look at these elements, like the precepts, like the meditation, hands-on healing, symbols, mantra, Reiju. Reiju, for people who don't know, is traditionally now translated as attunement or initiation. Then for me, you clearly see these esoteric link to Japanese esoteric teachings.
Yeah, it's. I think it's very definite that Usui Sensei didn't just create his system out of a void. There's, this. If we say that Reiki is like a tree, for example, then this tree has roots.
Yes.
It is a tradition that grows out of many different ancient traditions. That I think Usui Sensei had this great capability to take some of these things and to find out what of these things was kind of the essence and kind of the gateway into their innermost and the deepest points and the deepest profound insights that can be gained from these systems, but through a gateway that is a very simple to pass through and very easy for today's person to pass. And then this kind of creates a very unique path into these very deep insights and transformation in one's life. And haven't we all learned, or most of us learned, that Reiki is a 2,000 or some thousand-year-old tradition? That was kind of the narrative for so long a time, and for it seems like almost several thousand years that this is the narrative. And I was, and one of the things that the feelings that I kept bearing with me was that we've got this check that we have no cover for. We can't cash this check. So, but I felt like there was something to it. So where is the evidence that these connections lie? That this is a tradition that is based on ancient traditions? And I felt that esoteric Buddhism was definitely a very deep connection that was going on underneath.
Yeah, I mean, and that doesn't mean we have to become Buddhists, but it, for me also, it just points to the element of Buddhism, what is anjinritsume, or enlightenment. And my teacher in Japan, he's a Tendai Ajari priest. And he also says, when we talk about Reiki, or the system of Reiki, Mikusui's teaching, is a gateway into Mahayana Buddhism. And you can see this too. I've been teaching now full-time for 20 years, and a lot of people who've been practicing the system of Reiki feel drawn suddenly to, maybe, it doesn't have to be Japanese Buddhism, could be Tibetan Buddhism, or could be even deepening their Christianity or Hinduism, but they feel that through practicing the system of Reiki, they get more glimpses of their true nature, or we can, Mikusui's maybe time frame in that word, say Buddhahood. And I think this is really, when we look at the system of Reiki, that we can see those roots. And that's why I really like your study, for example, Reiju, the initiation, and how that looks very similar to different esoteric teachings in Japan.
Yeah. In reference to what you're saying, you're talking about the true self, or this Buddhahood, or the Buddha nature, so-called. So this is something also very apparent in Reiki, and where it brings us. From a Japanese perspective, I would call it Hongaku, right? The original enlightenment, our enlightened nature, and I definitely share this feeling that Reiki is not Buddhist or religious in a way. I'll bring my own, the perspective from where I come from with Judaism, for example. I know plenty of Jewish Reiki masters and people who see the connection over there, and actually going into Kabbalah, there are some deep correspondences there, which are very interesting. And so this is the Buddha nature, or the enlightened nature, or this bright, or it's not, enlightenment is not really, is a Christian-based notion that there is some kind of light, but actually Buddhahood is awakening. Actually, is awakening the way things are, right? So the Tathagata, the Buddha, is the person who has become awake. That's Bodhi, awakened to just the way things are, to nature, to reality, with minimal filtration, so to say. But back to so this is that Buddha nature, or this is that, so it's the calm water underneath the waves, the crashing waves of everyday consciousness. But back to the connection of Reiju and Buddhist initiations. Yeah, there's definitely that connection. I felt that again, learning. So maybe a word or two about esoteric initiation, what is majorly known as Kanjo, or Abhisheka. So that is kind of the gateway into esoteric Buddhism. It's kind of like this ritual where an Ajari, a priest or a master, confers the essence of the esoteric teaching to a student, to
Yeah.
initiate. And kind of looking at these rituals, I felt that there was something very close and similar. And that's where I decided that this was going to be one of the main points that I make the connection between Reiki and esoteric Buddhism. So I basically took a bunch of Reiki initiations, and because I couldn't just take one, there's so many different traditions. There's a myriad of different, what seemed like different initiations, and I kind of tried to create this prototype or kind of an anatomy of initiations, so I can take that and compare or analyze and compare to the Kanjo.
Yeah. And what I like too, I mean, I did many years ago, and I was actually reading through some files in my computer, and I came across something where I sent one of these rituals of Reiju to a Tendai priest, and I said, you know, can you just look at it and tell me what you see? And he said exactly the same thing. He said, Frans, this really is very similar to Kanjo, Kaji, Koshimbo, all of these elements we can see in there. And over the years, since 2001, when I went first to Japan, and now I've met lots of different kind of Japanese priests and priestesses, ajaris, and some, when you sit in that space and they perform kaji or kanjo, is really quite interesting. And it is, you know, like some are very ritualistic and some are as simple as some of the Reijus, and they touch exactly the same points, the majority of them, what I find very fascinating. And you can really see this also in Nikyo, the esoteric part of these traditions, that these points are very important, you know, for that person has that direct experience of their true self or their true nature. Except what I found very interesting too, Liad, and I think this is sometimes we forget this, that normally in Japan, the kanjo or kaji is really done by an ajari, you know, like a high-level priest who've done extensive training. First they were a monk or a nun, then they did their priest training. Traditionally, this was 3 years. You know, now that might have been gone to 3 months, but the 3 months is like you wake up like at 3 in the morning and you go to bed at 12 at night. And this is for 3 months.
Many rituals like these.
Absolutely, over and over again.
I spent pretty grueling experience.
It's pretty grueling. I spent a week and a half with one teacher a couple of years ago, and he had me do this for a week and a half, like till late at night and early morning. We wake up at 4 in the morning, and he was still gentle with me. I've heard stories when you do the priest training. Man, after a week and a half, I was like, holy shit, if you did it for 3 months or for 3 years, no wonder these people could perform kaji or reiju, spiritual blessing. It's a very different juice, a very different quality. And yes, we can all do the physicality of the reiju, but for me is that daikomyo, that great bright light, what is really the essence of it.
Yeah, and the essence of it is not just so. I mean, if we look at the technology of the ritual, of the initiation, so how do we achieve what the ritual is supposed to achieve is by replicating whether it's a Buddha or the main or the manifestation, could be the great bright light or the Buddha. We replicate them, we replicate their presence, their power, their achievement, their spiritual achievement, their enlightenment. We become them. So this requires something. It's not just, again, it's not the movements, it's not the motions, it's not the little parts. it's what they do. That's why, for example, in Kanjo, you have the three mysteries, the Sanmitsu, because if the universe is kind of, if all the matter in the universe is actually the body of the cosmic Buddha, or the notion of the cosmic enlightenment, that's Dainichi, and if all the sounds in the universe, in the multiverse, and in creation are in existence are his voice, and if all thoughts and everything are his meditation or his mind, so kind of if we in a way assimilate it, if we in our body, our voice in our mind, or in our contemplation, or in our state, are each of these all at once, we become. We manifest. We don't assimilate there. We become it right here and now. We are what's called Jobutsu. We are Buddha in this very body right now. And well, obviously, this is a guru yoga. This is a type of thing that you practice with someone.
Yeah.
Okay, because it could also be dangerous if you just go about wildly with it, and don't have someone who has attained these attainments to guide you, and also this is something that requires this. It's not about the ritual protocol. It's not about the movements.
Yeah, and I think, Liad, this is for me, when I first rediscovered that, many years ago, that it's not a ritual element. One student once said, and I have to laugh about it because it's a beautiful lady. She was that time already in the 70s, and said, "Frans, we could teach a monkey how to do the ritual." And I said, "But that doesn't mean the monkey can do Reiju or attunement or initiation." And that's true. We can pick anybody from the street and teach them very quickly how to do a ritual, but it doesn't mean they can't do the initiation. And for me, this is really pointed out by Mikosui in the precepts, for example, and in the Reiki 3 symbol and mantra, but the previous symbol and mantra as well, that leads up to that direct experience of this great bright light, or whatever word we use. And I like that Mikosui picked just the word of great bright light, that it's a little bit less dogmatic than if we use Buddhahood or Christ energy or whatever. It's very open into our own interpretation, and from this really direct experience. And so last year I was in Japan, and this Dayajari, this one of the marathon monks, Mount Hiei, he performed Kaji on us, and it was, again, he did this chanting for, I don't know, half an hour with a fire ritual, and then we all had to sit, and he comes along and very similar points, but it was such a different feeling because his direct experience was so different than the normal general Reiki teacher, for example.
Yeah, so I think that, first of all, this kind of reflects on what is the quality of a Reiki master. What journey does the Reiki master have behind them? Yes. And what do they have as their experience? It's just like, for example, in one of your books, when you say, if I don't have tea, I can't offer you tea.
Absolutely.
Right? If I don't have this direct experience of the divine, of the true self within me, of Reiki, of Daikomyo, the great bright light, as you want to call it, how can I? That is one question, and second is how can I confer it? How can I effectively confer it? And again, this is a whole spectrum of things. And I love how you mentioned the precepts also in this, and right next to your head, the sentence that is now showing when you're just like this is gyo hageme, which is to do your work or do what you do diligently and with devotion.
Yeah.
It's exactly that. So with this, devotion to our daily practice, whether it's practicing the precepts, practicing Reiki self-treatment, practicing meditation, symbols, mantras, getting initiated and initiating, I'd say once in a while, I'd say once a month, or, and keeping this whole package together so that I can, be the best, be the sharpest saw, as this, so to speak, right? So I can be the best at conferring this, because,
Absolutely.
and yeah, and I mean, when you look, it's one of those things. As I was analyzing many Reiki initiations or Reijus or all over the map, and I was starting to see that I was looking at what is there, what can we see, what is apparent in all of them, and I also asked what can we not see, as an example. So what is it that we're missing, for example? Another way to look at it. And one of the things that we don't see, and I challenge Reiki masters watching us to kind of think and reflect on their own Reiju or initiation, attunement. Try to think about what can you not see in the Reiki initiation. And I'll give an example. We say usually, or some Reiki master might say that before the initiation, Reiki passes through you. You're connected, but there's like
Yeah.
it's there, but you're not exactly calibrated, or it passes in a some percentage. And then from the initiation on, it's on, baby, right? The switch is on. And not just that, from here till the end of your life.
Yeah.
What is the point in the ritual, in the initiation where that happens? I mean, I can show in the wedding ritual, there's the part where we put the finger, the ring on the finger and say, and the priest says, from now on, I now hold you husband and wife forever, or, there's the ritual practice usually reflects on the narrative, the myth, so to say. It is based on it, and it feeds it. It kind of gives it a manifestation. Okay, so we will see acts that in every rite of passage and in different types of things that have meanings to them. Where is the part in your initiation that says from now on you're connected to Reiki for good? And not just that, for the rest of your life. This is forever. And not just because you said it, or because there might be some symbols in there. Usually there is some sort of similarity in a way between an initiation and just a Reiki treatment.
Well,
right?
I mean, Liad, absolutely. In my Reiki 3 Shimpunan classes, I showed them in a very specific way Reiju, initiation, attunement, and then I go around the group and I say, what could they see or not see? And it's really interesting what the answers are. And what I found fascinating is that the most important, potent thing what people can actually experience is the unseen. And that, for me, I come back to the precepts again, and this is, again, we talked about it for many years, that when I first took the precepts to Japan in Japanese writing and I showed them to priests, they say, man, this is like a simple way, again, a gateway into the Eightfold Path or the 6 parameters. A simple way without becoming a Buddhist, but without getting carried away with it, but it will help you to understand the 6-fold path and the 8 parameters, the Eightfold Path and the 6 parameters. And so what I found really interesting is that ultimately, in a simple way, we could ultimately say for me that the Reiju is an embodiment of the precepts, is a physical manifestation of the precepts. So the more we embody these precepts in our life, then of course Reiju will be very different, because it comes from the juice of the precepts. What for some people is difficult to see. You know, I can see this action, but sometimes it's difficult to see a person's compassion or a person's kindness or a person's no anger. Of course we can see that, but it's harder to see. And there's also lots of different unseen elements within Reiju.
Yeah. I mean, for example, just to continue the notion of the precepts, I would definitely say that there are, the precepts are also in a way an energy practice.
Mm.
I mean, if I were to, you know, when I treat someone, for example, and I feel like the energy is, you know, I feel like something is sluggish a little bit.
Yeah.
There's like an oomph to it. I'd say, okay, can you think a little bit about just, you know, with gratitude, can you just think about a few things that you're really, really happy about and you're really grateful about, like whether it's something that you have or some good experiences or something that, or people that you got in your life. And so think about these things and kind of relive them and put color in them and really live them again, and you'll feel the difference. And that
Yes,
is
absolutely.
the way it is when a person practices the precepts every day. You know, it's one of those very few things that we have straight from the founder. We have so many few words that are, you know, from him directly, that we know exactly. He said, this is what you practice, this is how you should practice this is when you should practice it, and this is what it looks like. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so clear and clean and simple. And yet, most people, when they practice Reiki, they think that it's lay on hands or something, and they forget the precepts. And I say, here you've got, you know, this is straight from the source. So morning and evening, just.
Yeah, this is also, Liad, why I found what you were saying before, that, you know, when you compare Reiju with hands-on healing, for me also, if I am really doing a Reiju from that direct experience of the great bright light, as much as I can at that moment in time, what is an embodiment of the precepts, no anger, no worry, being grateful, be true to your way and your being, and being compassionate. And then I do a treatment from that space, then of course that space is exactly the same. It's just that we put our hands somewhere differently. And I always say, imagine in Mikasui's time, he would embody, say, this great bright light, and you would come for Reiju, and you would say, okay, let me be this great bright light. You come for a hands-on healing, let me be an asshole. No, of course not. He would go into the same exact space. So during hands-on healing, there would be the same chemistry available for that person to have a Reiju, even that he was performing hands-on healing. And this is the beauty, I think, what now we put such a big distance between hands-on healing and Reiju. But for me, you know, when you look at from that more esoteric Japanese traditional space, is more like this.
Yeah, well, I would say two things. I would say, one, they're an integral part of the system. They're some of the legs, and they're also different angles at kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
So if we've got this essence, this core, which is great bright light, Reiki, the enlightened nature of the universe and the enlightened nature of deep within me, of myself, and this bond. So there, different people are different learners. They need different angles and paths. Some of them need something that's more, for something they could sink their intellectual teeth into. Some people more kinesthetic, I guess. So these are different roots coalesced into the system to make sure that we are on this path to this connection, this highway between the core of me and um, um, the universe, or the enlightened nature of all that is.
Yeah, and this is also, I think, why I really like that Mrs. Takata, when the system of Reiki came to the West, that she actually called it initiation and not attunement. The word attunement only came into being after Mrs. Takata passed away. And I like the word initiation. It's when, say, you perform an initiation on me, then I might have the initial experience of that light, or that I'm not just physical person, but also maybe speech or energy or mind, and so I might have the initial experience of less anger, less worry and fear. But of course, that initial experience is not enough. And nowadays, in modern times, we say, oh, just do the attunement and voila, for the rest of your life, you are Reiki, you don't have to do anything else. But if you think about Mrs. Takata as an initial experience, then we all also know that if you perform a Reiju on me, or attunement, initiation, whatever word you call it, is really that if you compare it to the precepts, it doesn't mean magically now I'm for the rest of my life, no more anger, no more worry, no more fear, being grateful, be true my way, my being, etc. That takes the rest of my life practicing. Yeah. And so for me is that during the initiation, we get a glimpse of that. And then another initiation, another initiation, another initiation. Then we sit on our butt and we chant the precepts, we do hands-on healing, we do Joshin Kokuyoho, Hatsureiho, we internalize the symbols and mantras. And then that initial experience can blossom into this full-blown experience of the great bright light.
Yeah, I love this. I love this metaphor of blossom. I mean, speaking of Takata, she herself in several times would say that, if you don't do anything and you don't practice, then she would say that kind of like a muscle, it will this capability will atrophy with none or with less practice. So Reiki is definitely a practical, and you should practice kind of things. And again, getting back at the notion of this the lack of the notion of here's the part in the ritual that puts it on for now, that turns it on from now until forever. So it kind of begs us also to think, so if it's like that, what does it mean? Does it mean that perhaps the original meaning of the ritual was not that it's something that's from now until forever? So it means that it needs to be performed every once in a while, and then along the historic path of this ritual, the system, the narrative changed, but the practice still didn't catch up, or there weren't the ritual masters to say who tweaked it or changed it to match the narrative. That's one option. Another option would be exactly what you said, that this is an initiation. This is the start of something where I kind of give you, as I initiate, coming from that place, okay? Coming from that place of connection, coming from as much as I can to be an embodiment of the great light, okay? Of being Reiki, I would say. It's not regular Reiki that we do in initiation. It's kind of as much as I can being Reiki, or being essence of Reiki. Yeah. And as I unfold or open the initiate doing the initiation, and there's always this stage of opening the initiate's aura or being or kind of connection. I kind of open, and then I put a seed in there. That seed should be as much a pure experience of Reiki as possible. And then I close them up and say, we'll come back Um, so this, I kind of gave you this experience of Reiki, this experience of the divine, this experience of true self here. And from now on, you've got something to refer to. If you haven't
you
had
have a
a real
base.
spiritual experience, a kind of a sort of a version of Anshin Ritsume, this experience, now you have a reference point. And when you start practicing Reiki, you can refer to that point all the time.
Yeah, indeed, you have a baseline, and I think this is really important. I see it slightly differently, is that for me, there is no opening or closing, and also not giving of a beam, but this for me also depends on which angle we come from. For me, the being exists already in the person, is not something what is never, if they are the universe, then that's already there. A while ago, a Reiki teacher said, Frans, so that person hasn't been attuned yet, so they can't channel Reiki. And I said, okay, what does the word Reiki mean to you? And he said, oh, universal energy. I said, so what you're really saying is that person hasn't been attuned yet, so they can't channel Reiki. That person hasn't been attuned yet, they can't channel universal energy. I said, well, they must be dead, if you really think about it. So for me, it's not really giving them something, but actually making them aware what they have already. But this is, I think, also the beauty of these kind of conversations, to talk about differences and different viewpoints, and even that might be exactly the same. It also depends on how we use words. And I think this is also where now there is so much confusion about the whole idea of Reiju. And now Reiju is often seen as a simple one without symbols and mantras, and the attunement is the one with the symbols and mantras. And that, I think, is really how this ritual came from Japan to the West, and how in the beginning we only practiced the ritual with symbols and mantras infused with it. And in 1999, Hiroshi Doi went to Vancouver in Canada and said, oh, but we also do it like this, and there was no symbols and mantras, and everybody got confused. And now, you know, for me, people say, oh, this is Reiju, this is the attunement, but actually they never called it attunement in Japan. There was just one word for it, and it was Reiju, and it had different elements to it. And but this is, I think, also when we have that direct experience, what you're talking about, when we feed that bean the water, so to speak. And what is that water? Is our practice, hands-on healing, symbols and mantras, internalizing it, the meditation, working with the precepts, and then it starts to blossom. Then we also start to come to very different layers of Reiju. And it's not because you told me or I told you, is that direct experience of Reiju within ourselves, you know. And I think this is really what Mikasu was trying to guide us towards within a system of Reiki, that direct experience of Reiju or spiritual blessing within ourselves.
Yeah, I think, again, so if I guess all the roads lead to Rome, in a way, I think one of the there's a lot of question marks. There's a lot of, I've been there myself so many years, because I've learned it in one particular way, and I was taught that this is the way it is, and that's the tradition, and my teacher is teaching exactly as his teacher taught him, who taught exactly as they were taught, and all the way back, and then so we've got the whole complete system, and you know, and then one day someone else comes and says, well,
it's also like this,
completely different, and I was confused so many years, and then came those people who said, well, all the symbols were, you know, were just, you know, that was for people who didn't know anything. So there's a whole mess. this mess causes a lot of questions, and you don't know what to do and what to think about it. And one of the things, I think one of the greatest liberating thing about, you know, about what I did and about moving to Japan and living there for over a year and becoming member of the Gakkai and doing this work with Reiki masters from all over the world and joining initiations from all over and doing all this work was to come out at the other end and understand that the similarities far outweigh the differences.
Yes.
And that all those, I'd say, cosmetic differences, and I'd say, if someone asks me, I'd say, don't go there. It's Reiki. Just practice, practice, practice. In the words of Takata, yeah. Practice this. Let it, sink into it. Let it blossom, and you'll understand that these are paths to this thing that is already in you that you need to remember. Yeah. That you need to remember, right?
You remember it. Yeah, for me, Reiju is really remembering.
Reiki is remembrance.
Yeah, and I think this is also why Mikasui sat on his mountaintop for 21 days. And therefore we can also say that the Reiju is not something magical. Mikasui did very difficult practice on Mount Karama. And therefore, practice, practice, practice. And I think this is the essence of the system of Reiki, of Mikasui's teaching, sitting on our butt, and not just hands-on healing and falling asleep, but actually hands-on healing and being really focused like a meditation practice, reciting the precepts as a meditation practice, working with the meditation practices like Joshin Kokyo, Hatsureiho, internalizing the symbols and mantras, that we have that direct experience of that great bright light. And then Reiju, feeding that bean each time, that bean of light, and that it can blossom. Yeah, I think that is absolutely the essence. And you're hitting that hammer on the nail with the practice and the practice and practice.
Yep.
So Liad, if people...
That's Shinshin Kaizen.
We can see this also again in the precepts, the precepts are saying exactly the same thing. Keep practicing. And that's, I always say, we can do Reiki 1, 2, and 3, and we can make it in 1 day or 10 days or 5 years or 10 years. But in fact, it's the rest of our lives.
It's a journey. It's a journey. I think that's what's also beautiful about, for example, Reiju and between Reiju and initiation, in a way, kind of the different ways that they're being seen. How initiation is kind of seen as something that starts in forever, and Reiju is kind of, okay, I was there, I'm back again, and it's something unfolding, and we do it again and again. And then the kind of the notion of enlightenment and satori, for example, or Hanshin Yutsume. So satori, it's a moment. Enlightenment is kind of, you think, okay, so the Buddha has his enlightenment, and it has become a fixed state in itself. It was something that Mahayana, for example, would very much go against, about anything being fixed, just as for example, as dukkha or nirvana not being fixed. And so satori is like just this moment. Okay, so after I have this moment of enlightenment, or in the West it's called raptus, for example, or something like that. This moment where I feel I can still come back, and there's mail in the mailbox with the bills I gotta pay. So it's this honing all the time. As Usui Sensei also incorporated some of the Meiji poetry in one of these beautiful poems. There's one that says that even the jewel without the slightest imperfection can still lose its luster to dust.
Absolutely.
Dust. So this honing, this debugging, this defragging, this dusting off, it's something that we do all the time, and that's some of the beautiful part of Reiki and Reiki narrative.
Yeah, I think that dusting is the most important element. Yeah, so thanks, Liad, for this discussion. We have to keep dusting, and I think that's one of the most important elements, is we are this beautiful bright light underneath, and sometimes some dust comes on it, sometimes a lot of dust comes on it, particularly now with the coronavirus and all the other stuff in our world. So that's why it's so important to really embody those practices. So Liad, if people want to find out who you are, what's your website, how can they contact you? And most interesting of all, is some of your work going to be in a book?
Yes. Yes, and yes. Okay, so well, you can look me out on Facebook, and you can contact me directly in Facebook. And one of my pages is Liad Horowitz Reiki Master Research. You can look for my website. It's Reiki Masterminds. As currently I'm delving in my research to the mind of masters worldwide. So it's reikimasterminds.com. And yes, definitely. There's first of all, unlike my MA thesis, which is in Hebrew, my doctoral thesis is scheduled to be written in English. So that will be easier to read. There are some articles I've written over the past few years about Reiki initiation being a recreation of the sacred space of Mount Kurama, for example, and a few more. And yeah, there are books coming. It's on the way.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much, Liad, and yeah, we see you again.
Thank you very much.